I'm going to put a fresh save battery into a Game Boy cartridge. Hi and welcome back to the shed. I'm Joe Bleeps, and today I was about to send this Super Mario Land 2 cartridge to a friend, and I tried it out and it turned out the game wasn't saving at all and all the save files were completely blank, so it needs a new save battery. I've already done a video on this before, particularly relating to Pokemon game cartridges, but I thought while I was at it I may as well make a quick video, so I'm going to stop talking and show you how to swap the save battery on a Game Boy cartridge. Okay, so if you want to replace the battery in your Game Boy cartridge, you're going to need a few tools. Soldering is involved, so you will need a soldering iron. I use this 18-watt Antex soldering iron. I've got a pointed tip on it, and it's pretty useful. You don't really need anything too fancy. To open up the cartridge, it's got one of these security screws, and you need what's called a game bit driver to open it. Search on eBay or Amazon for game bit, and you'll probably find a kit like this that's got various security screws for opening up cartridges and consoles, and that will have the one that you need. It's kind of like a inverted star bit. Additional tools you might find useful is a solder sucker or desoldering pump for getting rid of some solder. A pair of tweezers or a knife is quite handy for lifting the battery off. Of course, you will need a replacement battery like this one here. Don't just use a standard flat battery. It's got to be one that's tabbed. It's got the extra tabs on that you can then solder to a PCB. You do not want to go soldering a battery. That's just a bad idea. And also, while you're at it, a pencil eraser is quite handy for cleaning up your cartridge contacts because they're kind of normally awkward to get into. Okay, so I've got a copy of Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins, which is an awesome game, but every time I go to load it, it's coming up as empty files, 0 progress on every single slot, even though I was just playing it earlier and I made progress and beat a few levels, so it should show that progress, which means that the internal battery inside the cartridge is dead and will need replacing if we're going to be able to save our game. Now, to open up a cartridge, what you need is a game bit screwdriver. Now, there's two different sizes of those. There's the bigger one for like opening up Super Nintendo consoles and GameCubes and so on, and the smaller one, which is on these cartridges. So a kit like this will normally do you quite well. It contains various different tri-wing screwdrivers and so on for opening up Nintendo consoles. So this smaller game bit adapter should get us into the cartridge, but the quality of these is variable, so you just have to be optimistic. A little bit of pressure on the back of it, holding down fairly firmly, and then rotating anti-clockwise to undo the screw should be all you need to separate it out. Don't lose the screw. The cartridge separates by sliding down slightly, and then you can lift off the top, and you've got the cartridge PCB inside. The battery that's on there is what needs replacing. Now, this is a tabbed battery. It means it actually comes with these tabs attached, which means that you can solder the battery straight to the PCB without applying any heat onto the battery itself, because that would be a bad thing. So what we need to do is remove this battery by reheating the solder and lifting it off, and then replacing it with a new battery. So there's two main sizes that you get with these tabbed batteries, what I will technically call the smaller ones and the bigger ones, and until you open up your cartridge you won't know which one you've got, so worth opening it up first, finding out what you need, and then ordering the right one. So I've got the small one there ready to go on. You can see the tabs are the right size for going on there. So first job is to remove this. Now I've got my tweezers ready to go underneath, and just lift gently as I heat the solder. You don't want to lift too hard because it could end up ripping the PCB track. There we go, so that's just come up there. And then on the other side, so I'm going to turn it around, just gently lift as you reheat. Make sure it's fully heated, fully melted before you start applying any lift to it, because you don't want to tear the pads off the board. There we go. Next, I will just clean up what I've got here just by spreading it out a bit, and I'll add some extra solder. So I'll just heat the surface, add a bit more solder, get a decent blob there. Same over here. And now I'll get my battery. Okay, so the battery I removed had the tab that was attached to the top there. So it's like this way around. One tab is attached to the side which has got the text on it, and that's facing down, okay, and that was on that side. The other one's got the tab going to the top, and that was on this side. So I'll make sure that my new battery goes the correct way around, like that. I'll heat from the tab side and add some solder. That will eventually fuse with what's on the board. It's all combining, it just needs a bit of patience. And then that is soldered in place. Same over on the other side. Let's just get my board in a decent position. Okay, So I am just heating the tab, applying heat to the tab and the solder below. Eventually the solder will start to merge. I can put a little bit above, let that all blob together. Now in this case, plenty of solder is not a bad thing. Careful when you're holding it in place, because obviously that metal is attached to this. So you'll notice I was holding it down by touching the plastic bit instead of the metal there. Even then, all the copper on the PCB is quite warm. You can see there that is a nice solid join here and here. Plenty of solder on each. The battery sits nice and flat, and it's fairly well centered on the markings there. Now, of course, when you've been soldering, it will get hot. So give the PCB time to cool down before you put it back in. So while you've got it open, it's a good time to do some cleaning. These contacts may be a little bit discolored. A pencil eraser is perfect for just cleaning those up. And if it's still really stubborn, you could use a little bit of alcohol on a cotton bud. But I think in this case, the pencil eraser is fine. Just clear my workspace. I've now got my cartridge going back together. So the board just sits in place there. Don't forget, when this goes on, it's got little notches that go in place. So it attaches a little lower down first. Then you push and slide it up. Then we'll flip it over. We'll find our little game bit screw. Get it back in place here. Get my game bit driver. And just try and get that lined up in the right spot. Turn it anti-clockwise till you feel a little pop, and then just screw it back in. Don't need to over tighten it, just hold it in place, and that is all done. Okay, so time for a quick test. Pop it in, boot it up. Okay, so I've played through a couple of levels, so hopefully that should now save my progress if I switch off and reboot. So now I go to the load screen, and you'll see there we've got some progress recorded. So that is now all good to go and repaired. So that's it. Awesome game, brand new battery, many more years of playthroughs, and lots of reliable game saves. If you enjoyed this, please take a look at the rest of my videos. Consider subscribing if you've watched more than one of mine before and vaguely enjoyed them. The subs do mean a lot, and I'll come back with something a little bit more in depth in future. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Bye bye.